Most people know about Pixar's beloved film Wall-E. Released in 2008 and directed by Andrew Stanton, this film has captured the hearts of many with its charming protagonist Wall-E, or Waste Allocation Load-Lifter Earth class. A few years ago, I taught a Sunday school class at my local church on the topic of man's labor in the context of our created state and the post-fall world. To explore those themes, I began the class with a few images from Wall-E as a thought exercise to explore the themes of the Garden of Eden and the description of man's role in the Edenic garden past, present, and future. Here I'm going to greatly expand on those themes and use Wall-E as a vehicle for continued discussion. For those of you who haven't seen the movie or may need a refresher on the plot, I'll be filling you in on the subtle Edenic imagery found throughout the film, including the very important and often overlooked scenes from the end credits. After exploring some of those themes portrayed in the movie, I want to contrast them with a biblical view of the Garden of Eden and man's place and role in God's creation. So let's explore the movie Wall-E. Does it tell a story of paradise regained? What was the Garden of Eden? And ultimately, what are the goals of man's labors? We have all that coming up. During the first 20 minutes of dialogue-free scenes, we meet Wall-E against a post-apocalyptic scene. The earth has been devastated. It's a garbage-strewn wasteland due to the apparent rampant consumerism and corporate greed that took place hundreds of years earlier. We will find out later that man has abandoned the earth to live on ships among the stars while they await the possible renewal of their home. Wall-E is left behind to clean up humanity's mess. It's an immense task, but Wall-E is faithful to his duties, plugging away every day for hundreds of years. In Wall-E, we see an image of complete faithfulness to a mission. One could say that we see him obeying the directive of his creators, never tiring, never turning away. Yet through his work, Wall-E finds joy in small things. He collects objects and imagines a better time, both in the past and the future. Here we see Wall-E during some downtime, watching a videotape he has found among the rubble. The clip is from the 1969 musical Hello, Dolly. The scene he watches includes a song from that musical, Put On Your Sunday Clothes. It's a song we hear repeated several times throughout the movie. Here's a few of the first lines. Put on your Sunday clothes. There's a lot of world out there. Get out your brilliantine and dime cigars. We're going to find adventure in the evening air. Girls in white in a perfumed night where the lights are bright as the stars. Wall-E is clearly fascinated by the lead female character, decked out in all-white attire, played by Barbra Streisand. But let's think first about the significance of the song. It wasn't chosen by accident. The screenplay writer and director, Andrew Stanton, had a part in the production of Hello, Dolly while in high school, so he pays homage to a simpler time. But the song being sung has an additional meaning for us. The characters are dressed up in their Sunday best. In Hello, Dolly, the characters in the play are, they're looking for adventure, which is kind of ironic because putting on your Sunday best doesn't mean going out and partying. And yet that's the way it's imagined in that play. However, I believe the director and the writer of Wall-E is drawing upon the imagery of Hello, Dolly to form an image in the viewer's mind of a simpler time in the past when the world looked good, people were carefree, love was in the air. It was the better America, the better time in the past that we're trying to recapture. However, I'm going to go a little further and I'm going to suggest there's a theological angle here. It's likely not intended by the director, but nonetheless, I believe is warranted given the broader theme of paradise regained throughout the story arc in the movie. The line you are most likely to hear in the movie is, "Put on your Sunday clothes." It's repeated multiple times. What did it originally mean to dress up in your Sunday best? You dressed up while looking forward to communion on Sunday or the Sabbath. Christians are coming before God and presenting themselves in their best to honor God. Not that they're perfect or wishing to be praised or even deserving of praise. But when one comes before the king, it is expected that one shows respect by wearing one's best. You are showing God that he has blessed you and what he has blessed you with. Furthermore, the Sabbath day is a foreshadowing of the final day of rest in paradise, the final Sabbath. In the movie, a simpler, more beautiful world is what Wall-E is yearning for. You could say he's looking forward to an earthly paradise. Wall-E and the movie viewers hearken back to a restful time, a more perfect time from the past, and yearn for it to return. Think about what Wall-E does all day, every day. He works to bring order to a world of disorder. The world is left in ruin and waits restoration. We see in both the musical and the movie a remembrance of the past as a simpler, purer time. And we look forward to a period of rest, a return to an idyllic state. Wall-E's world has been ravaged by neglectful humans, but maybe, just maybe, humans have a second chance, a second paradise possibly in store for them. One day, Wall-E's routine of compressing trash and compacting interesting objects is interrupted by the arrival of an unmanned probe carrying an egg-shaped robot named Extraterrestrial Vegetation Evaluator, or EVE. EVE's gleaming white exterior contrasts with the dirty wasteland all around her. Wall-E is captivated by this visitor, who, in her whiteness, hints of purity and goodness, as does the female lead in the Hello Dolly video. Wall-E, as a denizen of this dirty world, tries again and again and again to communicate with this otherworldly visitor, who we come to realize is searching for any sign of life on the planet. It is important to know that earlier in the movie, we saw Wall-E had discovered a tiny seedling representing new life or new creation during his daily and seemingly mundane work. It was a curiosity to him, and so he brought it back to where he recharges his batteries each evening. There's a dramatic moment where Wall-E shows the seedling to Eve. He has kept it inside a shoe. Eve scans the plant and realizes it is the evidence of life that she, if we might gender the robot, has been sent to find. She takes it from Wall-E and places it inside of her belly, her womb, if you will, and goes dormant while waiting for the ship to come back and pick her up. I want to stop for a moment, and I want to consider how this plant is portrayed, because it's crucial to the message of the movie. The plant is growing out of a dirty old shoe. Again, I don't believe it was an arbitrary choice by the screenwriter and director of this movie. A garden theme is what is being drawn out for us. The plant conjures up the idea of a garden as a place that will provide food from the ground. Having this first plant on Earth in a shoe reminds us as viewers that this future will require work. The labor of man will be necessary to tend this small plant and to bring it to the stage of bearing fruit. Man will have to tend this garden created from these plants. Eventually, Eve and Wall-E are transported into space, to the ship where the remnant of the human race has been biding their time while the earth is being cleaned up. But hundreds of years have gone by. The people are living on a ship named the Axiom. This name means a thing that is self-evidently true. So maybe we'll see what is true about the human condition here on the ship. We quickly discover that the Axiom population has grown complacent. There is no work, there is no labor that occurs here. They're served by computers. The people do nothing but to participate in activities that are wholly self-satisfying. The movie causes us to ask, what do we think our future will be like? Wall-E, the movie, depicts a world that man has destroyed through a lack of stewardship, and in which we're relegated to living away from our home with technology serving our every need. At first sight, it might seem as though we're living or they're living in a kind of paradise. Though we've been taken away from the earth, they now live in a life of pleasure. Is this heaven? Is this what some people including many Christians, conceptualize heaven to be no work, being served, just relaxing all the time. But is this really a future that anyone should desire? Should this really be the goal for humanity or some individuals? Is there nothing more? Is heaven nothing more? In the movie, the discovery of a single plant on Earth seems to reawaken the collective memory of people, to see that they have a home and that the Earth can be restored. But restored back to what? Maybe to a balanced ecosystem, with people living with nature and working the land rather than being served by technology? These are certainly some of the intended themes of the movie. At the very end, the people do return to Earth, and they carefully place this plant back into its native soil. It's the beginning of a new Earth. One might wonder, is this a return to Eden? In the very last scene, the viewers are shown little tiny plants popping up all over the place. And we're left to ponder, what will happen to this new world? Is there hope for this new world? Are they entering a new Eden that they will make for themselves? Or are we really left to wonder? Well, don't leave the theater, or don't turn that movie off just quite yet. You have to stay in your seats for the end credits because the story continues. It's the rest of the vision of the screenwriter and director told in glimpses of what happened after the return to Earth. The end credits show the little tiny plant covering over what once was the chaos and wilderness that man had created. It's as if the world had been without form and void, but now was being put into order once again. But of course, man is still man, and this is not a new Eden. This is not heaven. This is just the world's best hope for a new creation. It's a do-over, but one in which we sadly know the end of the story. We will know what happens once again. After all, has man been fundamentally changed by this trip into space? Or is his nature such that he will fall back into the same bad habits that led to the destruction of the planet the first time? Today, many Christians are apt to look back on the very good creation, and they yearn for return to a perfect pre-lapsarian paradise, which is the time before sin. And that comes more from their imagination, really, than it does from the scriptures themselves. They prefer to look back toward what they have heard about or comfortable with, rather than looking forward to what may be less known, a more perfect world to come. The theme of the movie is idyllic and presents both a positive and a negative view of human nature, though ultimately it comes down on the goodness of man. But is it really a complete picture of man? On one hand, there's some positive things going on. On the other hand, it's missing really crucial elements of our nature. It's a positive vision of what people can do when they decide to set things right, how they can live in harmony with the rest of creation. The movie's vision suggests that yes, man can do bad things, such as corrupt our relationship with nature and one another. But for many, there's an enduring belief, like deep down, that we can still pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and do the right thing. We can rise above our weaknesses and find the goodness that is not just inside us, but somehow and somewhere it really is who we are. If only we reach down and find that aspect of our core being, we can remake Eden and ourselves in it. This is where I have to say, hey, it's a nice thought, but it just doesn't live up to what we have learned from scriptures or through our collective experience. It's not the biblical presentation of the arc of history. The theme presented in the movie is missing some crucial elements of the redemptive plan that God has put into place. In the end, it comes up short of a grand vision for human history, past, present, and future. It underestimates the effects and depths of our sinful state that only Christ's blood can atone for. As the credits rise to their final crescendo, we see Wall-E and Eve, hand in hand, standing before a massive tree. It's as if the question being asked is this tree at the center of a new Eden? Have Wall-E and Eve carried out the original mission of Adam and Eve? After all, they fought off the evil technology that kept humans in subjugation and from finding their natural roots again. It's as if they fought off or rejected the serpent in the garden, and rather than succumbing to that serpent and being cast from the garden into a chaotic world, their trial was successful, and the tree has grown to become a garden that covers the entire earth. So maybe I've made it sound a little bit like Wall-E's an allegory for God's plan of redemptive history, as if it were an adaptation of C.S. Lewis or a J.R.R. Tolkien novel. But no, I don't believe that this was the intent of the director. Wall-E's main themes are environmentalism and the dangers of technology. Now, those themes aren't antithetical to a Christian worldview, but neither does the movie portray the true nature of man, creation, and redemption, as many Christians understand these concepts. Let me illustrate this again. You see, I have yet to show you the very last image from the movie. So let's go to that final vision from the movie before the last credits roll. In these final images, we pan down from the tree that Wall-E and Eve stand before to discover that the tree is none other than the specific plant found by Wall-E in the chaotic wilderness to which he was tasked to bring order. This tree has extended life to the entire planet with the help of the labors of man as shown throughout the credits. One could say that man has taken the plant and created a Garden of Eden that has spread across the whole world. I think this is part of the imagery that the director had in mind. However, it's just using biblical imagery rather than teaching the intended lesson about man and his relationship with God. The message of the movie is more about being one with nature, how we can work with nature, and how we can express our true good nature. The tree they have gathered around is more akin to the world tree of various religions. The shoe is man's labor, and if directed properly, at least in the mind of the film creator, this will lead to many good things. Not good in the sense of work to the glory of God, the creator, but good in the sense of being beneficial for mankind and celebrating nature as a gift of the creator. While not discounting that our labors produce good things, I will point out that the Christian, at least those of traditional Protestant roots, do not see good works as the source of our salvation, though they have a purpose in God's plan. Let's review and reflect upon what we've discussed thus far. In Wall-E, we have a vision of humankind coming to their senses, realizing their good roots in nature and by force of their own will restoring the earth back to an Edenic paradise. Presumably a new world in which man is in harmony with nature. But is this the whole story? What do you think will happen in the future? What has been accomplished? How will things work out in the future? Will man have changed so significantly that he can avoid repeating the same mistakes made over and over and over and over again in the past? Has he learned enough to sustain a utopian society or a heaven on earth? Maybe, and most importantly, we might ask, does man possess the nature or the capacity to obtain these things to change himself? I submit that we all know that such a utopia, a paradise regained, is not truly possible, at least not solely through our own actions. Let's set aside the Bible for just a moment and think about this. Let's consider what we've learned from, say, evolutionary psychology and biology. We know from studying humans that they are wired for survival. The kind of altruism that would be required to maintain a utopian society cannot be expected to be universal. Despite how good the society might be, some individuals will decide that they can get a leg up through exploitation. Within a generation or two, this strategy will have been adapted by some portion of the population. Eventually, the society will devolve and the common vision will be lost. We have more than enough history to look back upon to know that this is the cycle of civilizations. It is also the history of, say, the Israelites who repeatedly returned to God's word only to abandon it again and fall back into sin. Now, a Christian perspective of the arc of history sees human beings subject to fertility and following the desires of the heart rather than that of God. Functionally, this doesn't really look that different than what I just described. While God created, in the Garden of Eden, the conditions in which man could live in full and unfettered communion, this is not really possible now. Man's desires expressed as pride, lust, influence, and so forth inhibit man's ability to live in perfect community with one another. Man, through his own efforts in his present state, whether you wish to understand that as a product of sin or the result of evolutionary processes, is not capable of producing a utopian society or a new Garden of Eden. My view is that God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden with the capacity to succumb to the desires of the flesh, pride, deceit, lust, and so forth. He had both the freedom to sin and to not to sin. The Latin phrases used by theologians are posse peccari and posse non peccari. God gave Adam and Eve an opportunity to follow his word in a place, a temple if you wish, that he had set aside that was very good for their habitation. The Christian understands that Adam and Eve's bodies, whether providentially formed through evolutionary processes or by special fiat creation, are subject to the desires of the flesh and thus result in actions contrary to God's will. And so our sinful nature prevents us from creating our own paradise on earth by our own will. Similarly, the non-Christians and non-theists, they also understand man's inability to enter into an earthly paradise because man's physical origins do not lend themselves to universally uniform thoughts and actions, leading to outcomes enjoyed or agreed upon by everyone. Fleshly desires will always result in the breakdown of any perfect society, such that no society can be agreed upon by all individuals that are diverse in thought and biological urges. In this way, both Christian and secular scholars might agree that a true paradise is not possible within the confines of the present world or our present existence. Let me try to say this in a different way. Many Christians tend to believe that the original creation was a perfect world, a world without pride, a world focused on others rather than oneself, with a heart oriented solely toward the Creator and not toward the creation. One way to realize this couldn't possibly continue is to see this as the result of our bodies having been formed like the beast, from the dust of the ground, whether supernaturally or via an evolutionary process. We have similar biological desires as the beasts of the field. God commanded and expected much more from Adam and Eve, having brought them into communion with himself in the garden temple. But created like other creatures, we are not capable of fully taming our brute and innate behaviors. Hence the need for God's redemptive plan, since man cannot achieve through his own actions the perfection required to live in God's holy presence. At this point, we could ask some very important questions, such as, what was the state of the creation in which Adam and Eve were placed in a garden and communed with God's creation? And more importantly, does the Bible suggest a return to an Edenic state or something much better? These are questions that I'm going to return to in part 2. And I'll turn my attention to what a Christian view of man's labor is and his relationship to the garden in this present world. I'm Joel Duff. Thanks for listening. I hope you'll join me in the future to discuss questions like these further. Blessings to all of you.